so that's your dust off.
You know, there's a lot of guys who wouldn't have done what you did. I thank you for it.
You would have.
It was that or kill you.
I'm just glad fate brought you to the airport.
I'm not sure you'll agree with that tomorrow. Just tell Soren midnight. He'll know the place.
He is fast, I will say that.
"72 hours. 72 hours.
What did you just say?
That's exactly how long Zion lasted last time.
What do you mean and who are you?
Me? Nobody. Just a spectator enjoying the ride. 72 hours.
You're here.
Niobe? Ghosts?
They're waiting,
Has everyone arrived?
all but the Nebuchadnezzar.
Figures. Anything for an entrance.
Captains.
Captain Niobe, my crew and I appreciate what you did for us back there.
How is he?
He's alive. Happy to be alive.
Let's get going, because you know Morpheus is not going to show until after we get started.
I agree. I don't like us all being in the same place for too long. Why don't you tell us what this is all about, Niobe?
The machines are digging.
Shit, no.
It's the feds.
Get to your exits.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima. On the topic of Enter the Matrix, of all things. Now, it's not as weird as you might think, just because the new movie is coming out, and I thought, you know what, let's revisit that. I haven't played that in a long time. But what you might find weirder is my actual opinion on it, because a lot of people hate Enter the Matrix, and I mean hate it. A lot of people were really excited for it, played it, and then decided they hated it. Then there's a fair few people, not as big as the first group, who think it's just an outright average game. And then you've got an absolutely minute group of people who actually enjoy it. and who actually think to themselves, this is actually a good game once you get used to all the little things that it does in weird ways. 3 guesses as to what group I'm in, and I'll give you a hint, it's not the first 2 that I mentioned, because I owned this back on the GameCube in the day. Of all consoles to own this on, it was on 2 discs on the GameCube. It was certainly something else. But it was actually pretty good on that platform. But here I'm actually playing it on the PC because I didn't even know there was a PC port. Genuinely didn't even know. But on top of that, it wasn't a very good port. But if you install the game itself, patch 1.5.2, the widescreen patch, and a no CD patch, I believe from, I can't remember what the name I got it from, the site was. It was like Burn Copy World or something like that. Didn't set off my AV, didn't do anything. After I got that, the game genuinely works fine. The mouse sensitivity is a bit shit, which isn't particularly great when you're trying to aim the sniper rifle. There's some graphical glitches here and there because of the widescreen mod that make perfect sense. Like, I've got this one thumbnail recorded where it's got a guy where he looks normal on one half, but on the other half he's got crazy legs because they never intended the cutscenes to be seen outside of 4x3. And if you all tab out of the game, it just crashes immediately. Which, okay, not the best, but I'll work with it. The game's got pretty frequent save points, so you don't have to worry about it that much. And honestly, outside of all of that, the game performs great. It loads really fast, and I genuinely haven't had any game-breaking issues or even remotely coming close to those sorts of issues whatsoever. It's genuinely been a really pleasant experience outside of the issues that I mentioned. So, there you go. So, if you don't know what this game is, back in between The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, they brought this out, which is basically this in-between story talking about Niobe, Ghost, and their ship. And it covers their story in a lot more detail than the 2 sequel movies to The Matrix ever did. And it's actually kind of neat because it fills in a lot of the gaps that were left blank because of this game in particular. And they used the voice actors from those movies. They even have these full-on FMVs that you've already seen that have actors from the original movies, sets, pieces, I mean like props and what have you. It's all authentic as hell. And for someone who was a fan of The Matrix back in the day, they would have loved this. But there's even some neat things going on like just outside of the gameplay in general. So you've got 2 different playable characters, Niobe and Ghost. And in any other game, they'd just be like skins of each other, right? But in this game, they actually have entirely separate levels to each other in a lot of different places. Like how if you're driving on the highway from the famous scene in The Matrix Reloaded, you will actually be driving the car as Niobe, but you'll actually be playing a rail shooter sort of thing as Ghost. And on the on-foot levels as well, when the 2 characters split up, they'll actually be doing different things in completely different levels, and they'll meet back up at certain points. It's a really nice thing to encourage replayability. There's a couple other things like that that are in the game as well that I'll talk about a bit later. But it's a nice touch. And the game itself is no slouch either. While you do repeat some levels in between the in between the 2 playable characters, you'll still get a couple of hours of unique content out of both of them, along with the levels that get repeated between them. So it's easily like an 8-hour to 10-hour game if you play down both paths. It's pretty damn long. Like, it took me 3 hours just to get to the, God, what is the part that's after the sewers? The Merovingian's mansion. It's like halfway through Niobe's campaign, or just both campaigns in general, really. But it also, it also took me 3 hours to get there. So yeah, like 10 hours to beat both campaigns. And I'm playing this on medium and died a few times, but for the purpose of keeping this video relatively succinct, I've actually cut out a lot of my deaths. So, the gameplay itself is almost exactly what you expect. It's a linear set of just levels where you go through, explore around a tiny bit, but they're usually pretty linear. And you've got both melee combat and ranged firearm combat to deal with a bunch of enemies that come along, including just regular dudes, including agents who are incredibly hard to kill, so you need to either put a lot of effort into defeating them or put all your effort into running away. But of course, the major star of the show is the Matrix moves because, well, it's the Matrix. And if you're in the Matrix, you want to be doing the Matrix moves because it's the Matrix. So the main way that this game revolves its second-by-second gameplay loop is by the use of bullet time, although in this game they call it focus. Now, you can normally shoot guns and go into melee combat with regular people, and you will be able to get the job done most of the time. But the thing you'll notice when you're out of actual focus combat is bullets fly at you really fast. I mean, as expected. Your hand-to-hand combat isn't doing as much damage as it possibly can. And you'll also find yourself getting the shit beat out of you by agents and what have you, and you won't have some of your moves available to you. But you have a replenishing focus meter, and this replenishing focus meter slows down time and allows you to do all your fancy Matrix moves. So you've got running on walls. Bullets will move at you slower, so you actually have the ability to get out of the way. You'll gain access to a bunch of extra moves, whether it be doing dodges in order to avoid bullets entirely, or doing flips and dives in order to shoot at people while maintaining a lower profile. And your melee moves will get more effective as well, so you'll be able to do harder punches. You'll be able to do that move where they sweep the leg and then punch the guy in the stomach and send him flying. That's exclusive to Matrix mode, focus mode as they call it. And so the entire game turns into basically focus management. You'll be waiting for your focus to recover, but you'll be able to do things like take cover behind walls and let it all recover. You'll be able to run out and take pot shots at them. And of course, some weapons will be more effective than others, although they're useful in really different ways. So the way that the shooting in this game works is that there's no dedicated like aiming cursor or lock-on. Instead, you just need to point yourself in the general direction. You'll lock onto the first enemy in front of you. But this actually works way better than you might expect once you get used to it, because a lot of the weapons in this game are actually quite deadly. And the ones that aren't usually have some way to make up for it. Like, for example, you can dual-hand pistols and submachine guns, and if you've got two enemies in front of you, you'll shoot at both of them simultaneously. But turn on a bit of your focus, and not only will you shoot at both of them simultaneously, you'll be super accurate, and you'll probably be able to take down both of them really fast. And so, as a result, it's just this combination of knowing when to use your melee moves, knowing when to use your focus, knowing when to pull out specific guns for the job. And once you get used to it, it's actually a really engaging gameplay loop. I genuinely have trouble understanding why so many people outright hate this game. Now, I'll be the first to admit, it can be a bit janky from time to time, because there are times where you'll be trying to like run along a wall, but you'll run up a wall. There'll be times where you're trying to do a focus jump, but you'll end up going the slightly wrong way. There'll be times when you're trying to shoot at one particular enemy, but you'll shoot at another because the lock-on is a little bit loose like that. But it really isn't that bad. Like, even on the GameCube version, which I remember playing, I remember it not being that bad. And I don't even remember, like, I will admit, the GameCube version is the first game I ever saw crash my GameCube. Because I remember very specifically the crash screen. It was black, it had some text up at the bottom and the top of the screen, and then there was a list of hexadecimal just in the middle of the screen. And it was quite impressive, but once you get used to it, once you understand to like leave the walls a little bit of a wide berth, once you understand that you need to press a button to get your guns out in order to actually do some shooting, and you'll automatically put them away and start doing melee moves when A, you get too close to an enemy, or B, you run out of ammo. Once you get all that down pat, it genuinely works really well, because the focus and the balancing of using it creates some tense gameplay, because if you run out of it in the middle of a firefight, you're gonna get shot to pieces, right? If you're out of cover and you run out of focus, they are gonna hit you hard. So keeping track of your focus remains engaging all the way through, because you need to be as efficient as possible. Basically like the Matrix. And the way that they've designed a lot of these levels actually resembles a lot of the movies. They have very purposefully, whether entirely on purpose, or not much entirely on purpose, but you can be like, what's the word I'm looking for? sorry, let me try and describe it another way. So, there's a couple of situations where they'll stick you behind a bunch of pillars. Those pillars will start getting shot to shit, and you'll need to stick behind them and shoot at the enemy from long range. Sound familiar? Because it's basically just reconstructing that one scene from the first Matrix movie where they're doing the raid on that building, right?
What's the status on the grenade?
Then they've got scenes that are just flat out ripped from the movies, like for example, the highway chase with the Merovingians, two vampire, white-haired emo bastards, right? You know, things like that. They will actively recreate the, what's the word I'm looking for? They'll actively recreate situations from the movie, whether it be entirely accurately or just, you know, referencing them while still giving the same feel. But then they'll still give you some really interesting combat scenarios, whether it be defending yourself from a bunch of dudes who just come run right in front of you, needing to snipe people, trying to do a little bit of stealth takedowns in order to give yourself a little bit of a better thing, having these clogged hallways that give you plenty of room in order to start doing melee combos on tons of people. They give you a little bit of everything and they're constantly switching it up, so it never gets too boring, which is really appreciated. They also tend to go a bit out there sometimes, like for example, they have, what's the word I'm looking for? They have a part of the game where you do nothing but kill vampires. I'm not even joking about that. They're full-on vampires with wooden stakes. There's a point where you're going through these skyscrapers where you need to be fighting off a ton of agents all at once. And they do a couple of other weird things like that in order to keep things interesting. And as a result, the game never becomes too boring. There are some parts where it like expects you to do platforming, and sometimes the edge detection can be a little bit wacky. Sometimes it's a little hard to know where you need to go and what you need to shoot. Thankfully, they will pop up a you need to go this way compass if you're stuck on any particular level for too long, so it's not that big of a deal. So just outside of the jank, I don't have much that I can really criticize, although there are absolutely some things I can criticize. Like, this is not a very good looking game. The FMVs and the cutscenes, they look fine. There's nothing wrong with them, right? But the actual in-game graphics are not very pleasant. I will admit that. They're very utilitarian and not much else. They're not going to be winning any awards for their graphical styling or their technical excellence. And the sound mixing isn't particularly great either. At least by default, you're going to have the music get kind of underwhelmed by the, whatchamacallits, by the overall sound effects. Might need a little bit of tweaking in the menu to go about that. But at least it runs well enough, at least the game that I'm playing right now is. I don't really have a problem with the way that it handles right here. And yeah, it all genuinely just works a lot of the time. I don't know where so much of the criticism is coming from. It's like everybody has been like, what's the word? It's like everybody was just so drawn in by the hype that's when the game wasn't unbelievably fantastic, everyone just thought it was the worst game ever. See Cyberpunk 2077 for that one. And I will admit, it's not the best looking game in the world. It's not the best sounding game in the world. And it can be a bit rough around the edges. But I genuinely still have a lot of fun with this. The gunfights are fast-paced and enjoyable. Using your Matrix moves is always going to be satisfying, especially when you can manage to turn a wall kick into a fantastic just spray of a shotgun that sends two people flying. Or when you can do the back kick, which is, like, all the melee moves in this game are unique depending on the direction. So you can do melee moves however you feel like it. Like, I like kicking dudes in the head, then kicking the legs out from under them, and then kicking them in the head again. But you can combine these moves in some really fun ways, like being able to kick people over rails or send them flying into a wall and just knock them out cold. It has all of these sorts of things. And it's just fun. That's the thing, like, it's relatively well balanced. I'm playing this on medium, or there is a hard difficulty. I remember beating it on hard difficulty back in the day. And it's good. It's genuinely good. I'm disappointed that this has such a bad rap because it does not deserve it in the slightest. And just being able to do endless side flips while shooting out a bunch of people, disarming them, sending them flying into walls, making use of all the fun Matrix moves in order to take them all out one by one, but at the same time, needing to manage my focus so that I don't get shot to pieces in the middle of a gunfight and I have access to my more powerful moves if I need them. Having a bunch of different weapons to play around with that all have their own utility and purpose. It's all just good. And I don't get why so many people hated it. Would this have set the world on fire if it wasn't like the Matrix IP? No, probably not. Is it still fun? Is it still a game that I'd be willing to say go pick it up and have a look at it because there's a fair amount of fun to be had, it's pretty long, and it's got a bunch of interesting and unique situations and the gameplay that will keep you entertained throughout at least one playthrough, if not two, to see how it's different from Ghost Side? Yeah, I would recommend it in that case. And honestly, I haven't even mentioned my favorite part about the game yet, which is the hacking minigame. The hacking minigame might be one of the coolest side activities ever put into a video game, just in general. It's only 30 minutes long, even if you don't know what you're doing, because it's relatively easy to figure out. But it's probably one of the coolest ways to implement a bunch of different things that other games do, while still giving it that Matrix skin. Because the hacking gives you a little puzzle to figure out, gives you a few audio messages from Morpheus and Neo. It gives you, like, character bios, concept art, maps of the levels, and everything in between, right? It even gives you cheats, but if you finish the game and come back to it, there are a few things you can unlock. The first thing is a full-on multiplayer fighting mode, which is just nutty. There's a training level that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise, which is just kind of need to play around in for a few minutes. You can unlock a sword fight, which is just not even a sword fight, sorry. You can get a sword as a melee weapon to use in the main game, which is even cooler. But the coolest thing, and I know that this is incredibly minor, but I still think this is one of the best ways to implement this. Oh, also you got cheats, by the way. That's fine. There's no cheats that are particularly amazing. You've got, like, no gravity, faster focus, infinite ammo and health and all that. Nothing particularly over the top. But the best thing you can do is if you look at the maps of the levels that the game gives you once you've beaten them, and then you find the little codes that they have in there, and then you go to a different part of the hacking, and you say, drop me a weapons cache here, you can go and replay that level, and it'll have dropped a set of weapons for you to play around with. It's such a little Matrix thing to do, but I have to admit, I really appreciate it, if only for the thematic consistency they've got going on there. So yeah, Enter the Matrix. Not gonna set the world on fire, but genuinely a lot of fun once you get used to it. It doesn't look great, it doesn't sound fantastic, and it's a bit jank. But Matrix fans will probably love it for the little bit of extra detail that it gives to these characters' backstories. The combat is actually fun, and they keep varying it up with new locations and slowly teaching you moves to the point where you're wall running, backflipping, doing big kicks, and being a master of the Matrix. And just playing through the game twice in order to see all its content is still fun. And I remember playing through this multiple times in order to just enjoy it because it was fun. So yeah, there you go. If you never considered playing this game before and you can get your hands on it somehow, please do, because it's worth your time. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.
I am the Keymaker, and you are not meant to die here. You must hurry.